Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I'm Pastor Joe Fox, often imitated, rarely equaled. Welcome to Tactical Tuesday, tips and techniques. Today we're going to talk about blocking a road. But first, a story. Peacetime, training, JRTC. My unit went down there, so you're fighting a scenario against a dedicated OPFOR, opposing force, who are good at what they do. We received intelligence that was fed to us to keep the problem going along, that on Wednesday evenings between here and here, a courier travels down the road, a particular road, at a particular time. And they had used this scenario on many other units in the past. And the way we used it caused the way we dealt with that scenario caused some consternation amongst the cadre at JRTC, Joint Readiness Training Center. In the past, when they would feed units that information, a courier comes down this road at this time, and what they're doing is the units would set up an ambush. This Jeep would come rolling down the road at night, they'd ambush it, kill the guy, blow up the Jeep, pretend. He dies gallantly. They go forward, and when they search the Jeep, they find some vital information that then leads that unit deeper into the problem. And that's always what happened. The guy's dead. There's always controllers. They're like umpires. And then the unit withdraws, and they get graded on how they did. That's not how we did it. So we got the intel, and the guys went out ahead of time, and they scouted the place on the road exactly where they wanted to conduct this ambush. So far, so good. Then they went back in the woods, and they chainsawed down two trees, and they made logs out of them, big logs. And then they drug those logs to the road, and they stood one up here and one up down there, about 20 feet, 30 feet apart. Put explosives at the top of the logs, and they had them leaning against another tree almost upright, like this. And here comes the Jeep. As the Jeep comes down the road, they blow the log in front of him. And he screeches to a halt. He's trying to put it in reverse, and they blow a log behind him. Boom! And then the log falls over behind him. And then the guys run out, and they grab him, and they tackle him out of the Jeep and get the intel. And while they're doing that, other guys took come-alongs. It's like a winch kind of thing. They hooked it onto the logs, and they drug them out of the road. And then a Chinook helicopter came and landed on the road. And they took the Jeep and the guy, and they put it on the helicopter and flew him back to our base. His unit didn't know where he was. And so we're interrogating the guy, which is another set of stories which are kind of funny. And the umpires, the controllers are like, hey, you got to let him go, because his unit thinks he drove off a cliff somewhere, and they're getting ready to index, which is Army talk for stop the exercise so they can go look for him. So that was blocking the road. Before you can just decide this is what I'm going to do to block the road, you have to decide a couple things, figure out a couple things in advance. One is, why are you blocking the road? What do you want to prevent from coming down that road? This is important, because if you're trying to stop a tank, you need a different kind of obstacle, if you will, plan, than if you're trying to stop a Lexus, a Prius, right? You need different stuff. If you're trying to stop people on foot, you need something different than if you're trying to stop a Humvee. So you have to decide what or who you're trying to prevent come down that road. You also have to consider, how long do you want this road blocked? Do you want it blocked forever? Or do you want it blocked for 30 minutes? Less than 10 minutes in the case of the story I told you. How long do you want the road blocked for? Because that determines, again, what kind of, generally speaking, obstacle you're going to place on that road. You have to be careful when you select where you want to block a road, and there's a couple considerations on that. But the one thing is, if you make it too hard to get in, how are you going to get out? Right? So you got to think about that. You got to have a plan for that. And then you have to select the site where you actually block the road. We're going to block it right there. Okay, well, why? Why there? Not right. Why not right here? Why not half a mile down the road that way? Why are you picking that site? A big thing you have to consider when you select the site is how easy is it to bypass whatever you're going to do. In this case, these are fairly thick woods. If you're trying to stop a Prius and you block this road, he can't go around to the left or to the right through the woods. Does that make sense? So you got to think about those things. Any obstacle that you build, even if it's a 30-foot high concrete wall topped with razor wire and mines, can be defeated by people. If people build it, people can defeat it. Defeat it means, you know, the obstacle won't work in keeping them from doing what they want to do. So you have to keep that in mind. Obstacles, to be effective, are not build, walk away, and forget. Obstacles, to be effective, have to be covered by fire. Meaning, if I've got a roadblock set up there and I'm trying to keep people from coming this, oh here, I'll just use this. If I have a roadblock set halfway down this road here and I'm trying to keep people from coming this way, we're gonna have to have somebody somewhere that when people break out the chainsaws or the bolt cutters or the backhoe to try and get through my obstacle, we can stop them from doing that, right? Make their life difficult while they're trying to do that. How much fire you cover the obstacle by is determined by who the enemy is, how capable they are, how long you want to stop or delay them at your obstacle. So there's a lot of things to think about. I mean, a 13-year-old with a 22 could keep most people away from your fence, right? So think about that, but he's not going to keep soldiers away. So there's that. Let's talk about some ways to block a road after you pick the site. Make sure you pick the site correctly. You got to cover it by fire. They can't bypass it. It has to allow you to get in and get out as you want, and you got to consider how long you want this road blocked for. A simple way to block a road is to take steel cable, which you can buy. You can buy it at Home Depot stores. You would have to pre-measure where you're going to put it. Let's say I'm going to go from that tree right there to that tree's not really big enough. Let's say there's a bigger tree behind there. And all you do is you measure this cable so you know how big it has to be, and then you put a loop at each end of the cable. So you bend the cable back on itself. They make these little things. You squish them with pliers or bolts. You can bolt it together. And you put a loop at each end, and what you do is on this tree you stick one loop through the other and pull it tight, and then on the other tree you just wrap it around and then bring it back on the cable and put a padlock through it. Click. Ta-da! Across the road. If you want people to see it before you put the final loop on and make the loop, slide a piece of PVC pipe on it. Sometimes you want them to see it, right? You want them to go, stop, we can't go this way, and they go the other way. That's good. There's a lot of different reasons for using obstacles, and there's different ways to set up obstacle things, but we're talking specifically about blocking a road, okay? Boom. Stop people from coming down the road. So a simple cable is one. Remember when I said how long do you want to stop them? Well, if you had a series of cables across the road at intervals, 50 yards, 100 yards, and you had a guard force, an overwatch force, that would engage people when the first guy got out with bolt cutters until they figure out how they're going to defeat that and come around and break that one. They could fall back. They come up to do the next one. They could hit them again, and you can delay them for a long time doing that. Once they've figured out how to get through their third cable, though, they're going to be faster at it. So there's something to think about. So a cable across the road. Another simple way is to just block the road with vehicles, a vehicle or vehicles. You can either drive them into position, or you can drag them or push them into position. You know, you can get a bunch of guys on one and just push it, piece of junk. I have a friend who has a lot of junked cars, and that's part of his obstacle plan. Putting those junk cars exactly where he wants them. He already knows where they're going. Here's a little tip. When you position the vehicle, let's say you're going to block the road with two vehicles, because it would be tough to block a road with one vehicle. You could drive around it, right, on the side. And so you want to really get the road covered. Wherever the engine is, that's the hardest part to breach. And so if you're ever confronted with two vehicles across the road trying to stop you, assuming the engines are in the front of those vehicles, which it is in most of them, and you're going to ram your way through the light end, the back end of the vehicle. It'll spin. If you're going to position vehicles to block a road, if you put a truck across the road this way and here's the engine, here's the back end of the pickup truck, put the other one this way with the engine this way so you can't back around that. You can't spin the truck on its back axis. You want heavy things anchoring it. You can park them like that, you can park them like that, whatever. So you can drag or drive vehicles across the road. Cool thing about vehicles that drive is they're easy to put in and easy to take out. Mad Max, one of them, the Road Warrior, I think. They have that big bus, right? And they've put a corrugated steel on the side of it, and they drive the bus back and forth in front of the gate to open the gate, close the gate, kind of thing. So you could close it with a vehicle. You can close a road with dirt. You could get a dump truck of dirt and just go, or rocks. That takes a long time to clear, to get vehicles through. You could use a backhoe, and you could dig a big trench and put the dirt on the far side of it. So if the bad guys were coming this way and you wanted to stop them, we'd dig a trench across the road and put the dirt on this side. So it makes a higher thing for them to get across. You can make I told you about dropping a tree. A tree's fairly easy to deal with. And we're through, right? There's a thing called an abattis. And an abattis, what you do is if the road's going this way and I'm trying to keep you from coming this way, we pick out trees on the side of the road, and I'm going to drop this tree first facing you. So all the branches are up here and it goes. Then I'm going to drop this tree facing you on top of it. Then we back up and I drop this tree this way and this tree this way. And you do that in depth so all the branches are facing forward. That's really hard to clear. It's especially hard to clear if you've got guys with rifles on the other side of that, who when you get out and you're trying to cut this and cut that and do this and do that, they're making your life miserable. So that's a decent way to block something, and it's hard to clear. See that? Picture the vehicle blocking the road or the cable blocking the road. Picture the trees or digging a trench, and right? Differences in time and difficulty. You can divert water. If there's a stream that's going under the road in a culvert, you can either rip the culvert out or plug the culvert up and the water will come across it and help wash out the road. Things like that. For most people with non-military equipment at their disposal. You can reinforce any obstacle, you can and should reinforce any obstacle with barbed wire. String barbed wire through it so it just makes it harder for the guys who are trying to deal with it to have to get around. Now they got to clip barbed wire and stuff like that. I can't overemphasize, I can't say it enough. To be effective, an obstacle has to be covered. Somebody has to be watching it with a means to stop people from disassembling the obstacle. So those are things to think about. If you think, oh, and here's the other thing. Almost everything I said, probably all of it, would be illegal to do on a public road. Oh, think about that. Ramifications. Another thing to think about, effects on the civilian populace, right? You may think it's a really good idea to go block this road here, but now Farmer Bob, who lives right down the road, can't get to his cows or can't get his cows to the market or whatever, and he's not into this plan of yours. You might have just made an enemy out of Farmer Bob. So you got to kind of have everybody on one sheet of music as far as blocking this road goes. This lone wolf stuff, I'm just going to block it and they'll have to deal with it. That'll come back to bite you. You want the locals on your side. Tell you another story. Afghanistan. We go into this village high up in the mountains, and they have to go to market to trade their goods, sheep and goats and rugs, and buy things. And the way they had to do it was go, they're on this mountain, go way down this mountain, around here, up over this gorge, and into this town. Whereas if they just had a bridge going across this one river right here. They could just get to town to the market and get back. That's good for everybody, right? Come on. That'll make everybody's life easier. Less commute, easier to get services, easier to get your goods to market. And so we send the bridge builders in there and they go and build them this beautiful bridge. 2 weeks later, it gets blown up. Send troops in there, what happened? Oh no. Taliban came and blew up the bridge. Rat bastards. Fine, so they build them another bridge. A couple weeks later, what happened? Taliban came in the middle of the night, blew it up. Man. So they rebuilt the bridge. Oh yeah, third bridge, same place. This time though, they put security on it without telling anybody. Overwatch. Bridge blew up again. You know who blew it up? The village whose life we were trying to make easier. Seems no one talked to the village elders about, do you want this bridge? Before we just decided to go and help them by, of course they want a bridge to get to market easier. Oh no, this guy had 30 fighters in his village. Right across that bridge, and then down the road a little piece, there was a guy that had 100 fighters. They didn't necessarily get along. These 100 fighters weren't going to take the time to go all the way down their mountain, all the way across this raging river, and all the way up to exert their influence on these guys. But as soon as that bridge was there, they start looking across that bridge going, you know what? That little village is going to become our village. Villagers didn't want that bridge, so they blew it up. The same thing can work in reverse. And we didn't build a fourth bridge. The same thing can work in reverse. You block people out that don't want to be blocked out, who you have no reason to antagonize, it can hurt you. So give this some real thought. And then if you decide, yes, when the time comes, we're blocking this road, when is the time to get supplies? Now. When is the time to practice it? Somewhere else. Now, on this road, I can block it anytime I want. This is my road. I built that road. Well, I had it built. Don't break the law. All right. See you out there.